back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about Love and War, written by Paul Cornell, adapted in audio form by Jacqueline Ryder. This is a very, very special audio adventure. It actually takes the form of 2-hour-long adventures. So it's 2 hours long, and it comes in this really chunky box set, and there's just a lot to delve into the behind the scenes in this. I don't know what to talk about, Bernice Summerfield herself or the book that it's based off. I think let's talk about the book that it's based off. Back in the 90s, just after Doctor Who was put on hiatus, it was cancelled, let's be honest. We all know it was cancelled. Peter Darwin tried to bring back the show, at least in a spiritual sense, by teaming up Target novelizations with Virgin Media to come up with new original novels. In those cases, for the first 8 stories, the stories featured the Doctor and Ace, and could have easily taken place between the gap if Doctor Who ever returned, as Ace was still in it. However, with the 9th book, Love and War, they did something dramatic which would set it apart from any other Doctor Who continuity. They made an original companion. Now, Bernice Summerfield isn't the first original companion in extended media, especially when it comes to comic books. There have been vast amounts of companions. But Bernice Summerfield was the first popular, maintaining companion, one which the audience really got a love for, in a sense, and she became so popular. We're going to talk about Bernice Summerfield now. She became so popular that two people, Nicholas Briggs and Gary Russell, wanted her to be their flagship character. They got the rights from Paul Cornell to kick off their new series of audio dramas, as they made Doctor Who fan audio dramas with their production company Audio Visuals. But they wanted to do something which was technically canon. So they got the rights for Bernice Summerfield, put her in the audio dramas, and they rebranded. They were no longer Audio Visuals. They were Big Finish Productions. Bernice Summerfield's introduction into audio dramas, I believe it's called Oh No It Isn't, Oh God It Isn't, or something like that, is actually the first ever story produced by Big Finish. A few years, I believe it's like 2 or 3 years, prior for them to getting the rights to official Doctor Who media. Lisa Barrowman has been playing Bernice for the entire duration. She is easily the longest standing character of Big Finish, appearing right when it started, all the way even to the present day. Lisa Barrowman is still playing the character and still has the Bernice Summerfield spin-off. I've only dabbled in the Bernice Summerfield spin-off, but yeah, and for the 20th anniversary of the novel that she originated from, Love and War, Big Finish kicked off a brand new series, the novel adaptations, in which, as you can tell by the title, they would have adapted a novel, specifically the Virgin novels, which includes the 7th Doctor New Adventures, and also includes Past Doctor's Missing Adventures. I believe there's one with the 5th Doctor and 2 with the 4th Doctor. I don't know if they've done any BBC books, but I know they've done some New Adventure stuff. So that's all really behind the scenes in terms of the creation of this story. But before I actually kick off this video, there's something that I need to acknowledge in terms of my personal experiences with the canonicity of this adventure. For you see, in the original novel, and in this story, Ace departs at the end of it. In the novel, the departure is only temporary. I believe only 3 stories are in this, and when she returns in a much more adult form, and she regains her right of companion in a sense. But I've never been a fan of this idea, and due to the fact that that story, the one where she comes back, hasn't been adapted, in my personal headcanon, I'm not saying they're bad, they're completely valid, and I really hope that those stories are awesome as well. But just to keep things simple for me, I'm using this story as Ace's departure, that this was her final story as an official companion. So today we're going to be saying goodbye to Ace, played magnificently by Sophie Aldred. So yeah, that's really the behind the scenes of this story. I don't know if it connects too much with the novels. I don't know if they had, obviously they had a stretching story arc, but that doesn't really become a big part until later on with the Cardinal Master Plan, and there's nothing in this really that plays to it. There's scenes which I think could be suggested or maybe altered for the audio form to be less connected, but here it doesn't feel, you can go into this blind just on its own and enjoy it very well. Now, usually what I do in these situations is that I show you the official Big Finish CD covers. If you're curious, there's the official cover that it comes with, and there's some really nice artwork. I really like the attention to detail as Lisa Barrowman is actually wearing, I can't see, it's not coming on the screen very well, but she's wearing the actual original costume that Bernice wears on the cover of Love and War. But what's really cool is that it comes with this little leaflet, and it actually comes in the style of the Bernice Summerfield CD covers. So that's really cool if you like your options. Sadly, I don't think you can actually take the actual cover apart, because that's where the CD usually goes. I've put it on an empty DVD cover, but I haven't actually printed out a cover for this yet for my collection to have them on the shelf. So sadly, I can't show you it in its physical form, but I have made a cover. So you're looking at that. As you can see, it's not particularly well cut. Sylvester McCoy's head is kind of flat, but it's pretty good and it does the job well. So I'm looking forward to printing that out and having it on my shelf. So there you go. Let's get into the story in hand. Now, I'm going to state that I'm going to be skimming through this. This is a 2-hour long adventure, so I'm not going to get every detail in this video. I might skip stuff, I might forget stuff in parts which I didn't believe were interesting or good at talking points, but yeah, there's you go. The story actually, it actually has 3 discs, and on the 3rd disc, which I think is kind of annoying, it should really be on the 1st disc, or have the special disc as like disc 1. It actually has a prologue in which Sophie Aldred narrates a story which was actually published in Doctor Who magazine, setting up these travellers, a group, basically like a hippie group. They were actually based off a real-life travellers movement that was happening in Britain at the time of the book's release, in which they went against public norms and had free festivals and were loud and obnoxious in kind of sense. But sadly, they had to suffer through a lot of police brutality, to the point where laws were actually enforced by police to allow them to actually take more advantage of these travellers. Now that's all like the real life stuff. In this story, it's the political connecting between those events and the actual story itself is very clear in a sense that, you know, they're called the travellers, for crying out loud. And they're in this kind of like strange, weird world where they actually see a personification of particular gods, the god of women, I think at one point, the goddess of wisdom and courage and stuff like that. And then they meet Death, who explains that her time champion is coming, and he is bringing a sacrifice. Treat them well, make them feel at home, as my time champion is coming. As we cut to the Doctor, we cut to Bernice Summerfield, who is an archaeologist, or at least we believe she's an archaeologist, who is looking through these ruins and is learning about this archway on the planet Heaven, which the story is mainly set. And we also get a scene in the TARDIS where Ace is having a nightmare and she calls out for the Doctor. But the Doctor doesn't seem to be listening, as he's kind of having like a psychic connection with the not so distant future, and the future is telling him a story about love and war, which is the name of the title. So it kind of implies that the Doctor learned about all the events whilst he was dreaming, in a sense. So you could take this as this entire story is a dream of the future, in a sense. So that's really interesting. Part one, the actual story now, sees Doctor and Ace land on Heaven, this planet where there's a lot of detail in this story. You can clearly feel that it's novelised from a book, as there's a lot of those details which in most other mediums is either completely ignored or is very little. As we learn a lot about the planet and its culture, the Doctor explains that like the travellers are very dangerous, but they can be kind, which is kind of conflicted in a way of how we see them, which I think is kind of interesting, because the Doctor has always been not an authoritarian person in a sense that he has a rank, but he always carries authority with him. So to him to go up against the travellers and knowing the real life political influences of the travellers, it's very interesting, I find, in that particular sense. But in terms of the planet itself, the Doctor explains that originally this planet belonged to a completely different race who died out for no reason, and nobody could even find a body at one point, only scattered remains of their ruined buildings and their and all the items they have left behind. Like there were not even any corpses, they don't even know what they look like. Later on in life, after the humans and the Draconians teamed up to fight the Daleks, referencing to, I can't remember which one, I think it's Frontios in space. I think it's, Frontier in space. Yeah, it's Frontier in space, in which the third Doctor is involved in those situations. The humans and Draconians need a planet in which it's very unlikely to be invaded because it has very little resources or anything, but a good place to be, a great way to add culture and to help each side into learning with each other, which I find is really strange because we constantly get references to Draconians, but no Draconians appear. I don't know about you, but I find that really strange. Maybe they didn't have the rights, I don't know, but it just feels really odd that there is no Draconians in a story which constantly mentions them. And this planet was a great fit, and so they come here a lot of farmers, a lot of cultured people come to this planet. One of them, obviously the travellers come onto this planet. They go around to different planets and they arrived here and they've basically made a home for themselves. But also here is the archaeologist Bernice Summerfield, a middle-aged woman who likes her drink. She gets drunk a bit. You don't actually see her get drunk in the audiobooks, but I believe she gets drunk in a few bits in the novel. And she talks about like her experience with alcohol, and she's a lot more mature in a sense, and she can actually delve with the Doctor a bit on an emotional level. Ace is kind of dealing with her own thing at the moment. She's constantly getting memories of prior to meeting up with the Doctor, where she is thinking about her friend Julian, this man who she was friends with when she was a little girl, and sadly he passed away whilst Ace was on her adventures with the Doctor. She attended his funeral, and the first like 10 minutes of the story is her trying to build up the courage to ask the Doctor, can we go back to before that he died so I can say goodbye? But she never actually does, as when she meets up with the travellers, she befriends this guy called Jan. The guy's named Jan. And she kind of takes a massive fancy to him. And their relationship over the course of the story falls to love, and she starts to fall in love with this character. What's really great is that this actually kind of works in both continuities, this idea of Ace growing apart from the Doctor so she can move on with another person, someone who she can love and appreciate. In the novels, we've had stories with her falling in love with people to which the Doctor's either forcefully removed out of the equation or has used them in a sacrifice, and Ace has had to kind of learn, it's like, right, it was for the greater good. But from the audio perspective, we get her relationship with Hex and her relationship with the guy in the death in the family. So either way, either continuity way, Ace's storyline in this, in which he's finally, to which the Doctor kind of treats her as his little girl, someone who he will use, who he still like loves and enjoys the company of, but he still thinks that he knows better for her. But Ace isn't a little girl anymore. She's grown, she's matured, she's a woman now, and she can handle herself in every sense of the word. And that's a huge dynamic in this story, is the Doctor and Ace kind of drifting apart. We get a lot of scenes in which Ace starts then building up the courage and then asks the Doctor, can Jan join them in the TARDIS? Please don't make me choose between you and Jan, because I'm really struggling. And the Doctor basically is like, I'm sorry, Ace. I like you, I admire you, and I don't want you to leave. But he can't join the TARDIS crew. It's either me or him. Which does seem kind of strange from the audio's perspective, as we have had a third companion in a sense. We've had Hex, and at the end of that storyline, Hex grew up greatly and independent. But there's something sinister going on, something the Doctor isn't telling Ace. As they learn a little bit more about Jan as a character. Essentially, he with his friend Christopher were ready to fight in a war against the Daleks. and they had these drugs by the military, which was supposedly supposed to give them psychic powers. But Jan was scared. He was terrified of war, and he was scared of this drug that it might mutate him horribly. So Christopher grabbed both the tubes and started drinking both of them. Jan later stopped him and drank his one, but only a little bit, which gave him pyrokinetic abilities. So he has a small sense of like creating fire by himself. Christopher, on the other hand, is such a weird character. Not only did he gain massive amounts of psychic ability, but the way it's described, it burnt away his gender, so he's now neither male or female. I mean, I guess it's progressive in a way. It's a great role model for non-binary individuals. But I don't know how it, like, I can't judge as a cis white male. I can't really judge on the identity part, but I find it really strange. It's like the choice of him being a non-binary person is kind of taken away. And he still identifies as a male in a sense. People call him he, and he calls himself. And some characters actually kind of, in one scene in the prelude, people kind of take the mick of the fact that he's genderless now. So I don't know how to feel about that. And he becomes a prominent role as he is the gateway, and not seemingly the gateway, but he has the mass control of this computer system known as pewter space. Basically, it's the Matrix. People can plug themselves into this vast computer system where it's basically a dreamscape where people can like look into their inner thoughts and their inner things, and they meet up and they can meet with real life mythology. Well, I say real life. In the program, they can actually meet mythical creatures like death and gods and goddesses, which explains what was happening in the prelude. Very interesting stuff. The concept of the pewter space is vastly interesting, and we get some really great scenes. Ace actually sees her friend and actually goes back to her old home and meets her mother again, to which there's a great conversation in which Ace is like, "You've never been here for me. All I wanted was my mother. I literally burned the school down, burnt the carpets, burnt the drapes in the school, and set off explosives. And that's why we have social workers, because I'm destructive. And the reason I'm destructive is because I want your attention, Mum." Which is a great example of Ace's character, and really shows, in a sense, of her storyline throughout these adventures. I like to think this as an end to a trilogy, in a sense, with The Curse of Fendrick. I can't remember what it's called. Casualty of War, the second story in the 45 miniseries, and this creating the Ace's mother's messed up dynamic storyline. So I'd like to think that they kind of connect, and they do really working off each other. But it is important to note that really you can cut all these scenes out with the pewter space, with the exception of 1 and 2, which could have easily been taken in place in the real world, and the main plot wouldn't change at all. So it's very strange. It's very interesting, and I couldn't imagine it any other way. But in terms of plot, it's really unnecessary, and I don't understand what's going on. I don't even know if I like it or not. It's very strange. Throughout the majority of the story then, Ace and the Doctor are actually separated as Ace is developing a relationship with Jan, as the Doctor is investigating the tombs of the previous inhabitants of Heaven with Bernice Summerfield. And we get some really great scenes in which they basically work out what's going on, and the Doctor works out that these creatures called the Who Eyes are coming down and they can they're basically a hive sentient creature that can take control of people's dead, and they take the form of fungus. They're basically sentient fungus that can create zombies. And the Doctor works out that they've been on this planet. And what was really great about the story, it shows the potential of the Doctor and Bernie Summerfield. When they're talking to each other as individuals, as they're talking to themselves, we get some great scenes of them trying to open up to each other. And Bernice is kind of like, you're not going to use it to manipulate. You're just like, you're just an ordinary, just sort of individual who just looks at people and just sort of tries to see how they can benefit and stuff like that. As the Doctor kind of sees a unique aspect of Bernice, something like she has the thrill, the thrive to go out and explore. And we see a lot of them explaining their backstory, especially with Bernice, because obviously she's the character that we're at least familiar with, at least in terms of the novel. And she reads out her diary in that a few moments she fancied people, but she got too drunk and ruined it. And she has a complicated relationship with her parents, who passed away when she was really young, and her parents were murdered by the Daleks. However, when they are actually on the mission, on the case of defeating the Huai and investigating the tombs, basically when they both flick onto archaeology mindset, it's basically Sherlock Holmes meets another Sherlock Holmes, as Bernie Summerfield in that capacity can actually keep up with the Doctor. And so their dialogue is very interesting as they're bouncing off ideas and working off each other. There's a great moment where Bernice is talking to herself whilst the Doctor's listening, and she's like, could it be a sacrifice? No, that's kind of the guesswork that I hate with my students and stuff. And the Doctor's like, very good, look around, it's more like a science experiment. And it's like, oh yes, of course. And she looks around, it's like, she must be left-handed, unlike I, because she couldn't get, one of her arms, I believe, was free, and she couldn't help the thing. They find a corpse. I should have restated that. But yeah, I'm just gonna, surprisingly, one I think of the most weaker aspects of this story is the Huai. Going into the story, I thought they were going to be really interesting. I hear a lot of fans really loving these villains. The name itself was actually referenced in The Brain of Morbius, which is very interesting. There's no real connection between the story. Paul Cornell just took the name that the Doctor once said about one of the ships or something and just used it in this story. But I found them the weakest element of the story. They get some great moments where they manipulate and stuff, especially in the pewter sense in a way, because essentially the Hutai, what they do is that they symbiotically connect to a dead human, but when they do that, they actually absorb the memories of all the dead people that they've manifested. So they basically put the people that they've captured into their hive mind, and one of them actually turns to be Julian, Ace's friend from Pellavale. So we see some memories of him, and we find out that he actually had a good friendship with Ace's mother, to the point where he actually told Ace's mother that he was gay, something he didn't tell Ace. I don't know if it's stated that Ace fancied him, but she doesn't seem too shocked about the revelation. So, yeah, there's a lot of great moments in there. And the Doctor kind of comes up with a plan. He kind of knows something and knows aspects. There's these creatures that come around and go up into people's feet when they stand on people, and possesses them and slowly makes them into a Hutai. And again, I guess it's a spoiler, so spoiler warning for this story. The Doctor knows that Jan, Ace's love interest in this story, is already possessed. Now, the Hutai are fungus, they are a plant life, and Jan has pyrokinetic abilities, the power to control fire. So the Doctor's plan was for him to basically sacrifice him into the Hutai, and making him explode into a gulf of flames and destroying the Hutai once and for all. However, he wasn't expecting Ace to fall in love with him and to care about him. And there's a scene in which he wasn't there for, but he kind of planned out that Jan would actually kind of work out this plot himself, knock Ace out, so that when she wakes up, the plan is already a success. But the Doctor didn't suspect that somebody would have woken Ace up. And Ace kind of clicks. The Doctor's done it again. To save everybody, he's manipulated Jan to sacrifice himself. He manipulated me. That's why he didn't want me to go back in the TARDIS. That's why he made the choice between me, the Doctor or Jan, because he thought I'd pick the Doctor and I wouldn't be hurt by this. He doesn't care. I hate the Doctor. He's just like my mother. She was just used, like the Doctor being another parent figure. He tries to control me. He tries to manipulate me. And it breaks Ace's heart to the point where she can't take it no more, and just absolutely hates the Doctor. Something which I think is a much better ending than what was originally planned, in which she than originally planned in the Cardinal Master Plan, in which she becomes a student of Time Lord, of the Time Lord Academy, and basically trained up to be a Time Lord. I think this is actually a much better aspect to her storyline, as she's basically grown out of being manipulated, but she still is, to the Doctor, she's kind of still a child. We get a scene then where a small sentient part of the Hutai actually survive and actually capture Ace, only for the Doctor and a few of the travellers to get in and finally defeat the final Hutai. And Ace sees the Doctor and is like, "You disgust me, go away." The Doctor grabs her arm and is like, "No, Ace, please, please don't, not like this, no." And Ace even like shouts, it's like, "Did you even care? Were we actually friends?" And the Doctor shouts, "Of course we are, of course we were." And Ace is like, "No, you're lying. I was just a pawn in your game. You never considered me as a friend." And it even gets so heated that Bernice Summerfield even shouts to the Doctor to let her go, to which he does, and Ace runs off to go with the travellers and to end her era of the show. This, I think, is actually such a great fitting ending to her storyline, to the part where I am actually happy with leaving Ace like this. Obviously, We would have some novels in which she returns, and in later stories she would find herself back on Earth in modern day, in which she starts up a charitable Earth, her own charity company in a way. But in terms of this story and her, in terms of her era, that is after the fact. And yeah, it really helps. Not only is a reflection of Ace's character and her growing out of the Doctor's manipulating and seeing all this and basically realising that the Doctor isn't always really the good guy. Sure, he's the protagonist and he stops the bad guy, but does he always have the best intentions for everyone? Or at least this incarnation anyway. And yeah, but it's also a great reflection on the Seventh Doctor. It benefits both parties, as the Seventh Doctor basically becomes depressed as he sees that he's done horrible things to Ace, and Bernice Summerfield actually confronts him and doesn't sugarcoat it. He's like, Doctor, what you did was absolutely wrong to Ace. You were cruel. There's no other word for it. To her, you were cruel. There was no other way of putting it. Doctor, you were wrong. You're just plain wrong. And she had every right to leave. And the Doctor's like, yes, I know. So the Doctor originally then starts heading off, but then heads back after he finds a letter to himself, reminding himself about the goodness and the kindness of himself. He reads it to Bernice Summerfield, something which reflects her reading him her diary. This is actually, the story came out, this is actually in 2012, so this came out before the Day of the Doctor. Don't know if it's in the novel, but the Doctor actually quotes like a letter he wrote to himself to remind himself. And the first line is to never be cruel or cowardly. That's really interesting, isn't it? I really like that. So basically, in my headcanon, he wrote down the promise, the ideas that he had when he gave himself the name the Doctor. That was what he wrote down. And he's basically talks to Bernice Summerfield and is like, let's be friends, let's team up and join, and I'll show you everything in space and time. Now here's where it becomes really interesting. Bernice actually is like, wow, this is amazing, like I'm an archaeologist. Well, we learn in the story that she actually faked her way into becoming an archaeologist. She's not technically an archaeologist. She didn't do training, she didn't go to university to train. She's basically a fraud. But she still has that thrill, and so she takes the opportunity to travel with the Doctor by the hand. But she states, don't call me Professor, I won't call you Professor. We're not friends. Sure, we may grow up to be friends, but at this moment in time, we're more like colleagues. Me and you are not friends. I just want to see the universe, and you're the best opportunity I have at seeing everything. That's a great dynamic to start off right there. So there you go, that's Love and War. Overall, it's a very interesting experience. I haven't actually read the novel it's based off, so I can't really compare the two. But as a standalone audio drama, it's surprisingly well paced for 2-hour-long adventure. The dynamic between our main characters are so well thought out, so well realised, and is proof that Paul Cornell is one of the best writers for the series, with Jacqueline Reiner adapting it into audio form. Paul Cornell would also go on to write for the 2005 series with some of their best stories as well. So he's basically easily one of my favourite writers for the series. But I think the story also suffers with one main aspect. It's villains. They have some great idea, great concepts, but overall just come off as a brute force to be a backdrop to the main heroes, which I wouldn't really criticise this story that much, because the story is focusing on the main characters and this and all the weird things that's going on. But for 2 hours, I think the villains could have been a little bit more examined for. Again, this might be improved, better upon, I should say, because this came second. It could be better in the novelisation. Novelisation is the wrong word because that came first. In the novel. But the adaptation, I think, suffers with the Hutai, which is a crying shame, because I know there are a lot of people's, I wouldn't say their favourite, but I know they're in there in the best Doctor Who villains category for most people. But for me, I don't know, I just felt like I've seen the fungus zombie creatures all before. Not in Doctor Who, but I've seen this idea multiple times and I was kind of disappointed in that. But yeah, highly recommend it. It feels, there's a lot of abstract concepts I didn't mention. There's also scenes in which the Doctor starts flickering through his memories, and he starts calling Ace Dodo at one point. Actually, in a few scenes he calls her Dodo when she's not around, which is later explained as him having a connection to the not so distant future and setting up his master plan. But yeah, really strange. If you like Mark Gatius's work, if you like that abstract concepts, highly recommend it. It's a great story. Highly check it out. So there you go. We say goodbye to Ace and we say hello to Bernie Summerfield. So sadly, I don't have any more adventures with the 7th Doctor and Bernice together. However, there is one more story which I can talk about, as we're going to be talking about the second sci-fi cruise film, which I haven't talked about yet. So join me next time for the Crystal Conundrum. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!